The letter was dated July 1989. I am 10 years old. It read, "Dear Mom and Abba, this year camp is terrible. This is my second day here and there has been nothing fun and all the programs are disorganized. My counselors are supposedly nice. After we heard that if we were good, we'd get pizza parties, one of my counselors threw us a small bunk party. What I didn't know was that he gave out all my gum and fireballs. Please send more. I know you can't understand this letter very well, but please come soon. I'm in a time of dread. Love, Noam. P.S. I'm not kidding." Now, whether we want to evaluate my childhood propensity for slight exaggeration or just marvel at the choice of vocabulary, I'm in a time of dread. I just love that. What's clear to me is how sharply one's circumstances, or at least their perception of their current circumstances, can change with the benefit of time and hindsight. While I must have forgotten and blocked out that infamous summer of '89, I would go on to stay at the same summer camp throughout my teens and into my early 20s as a camper, then CIT, counselor, and finally senior staff. This is the place I would call my second home, where I would go from awkward adolescent to somewhat confident young adult, discover my love of song leading, then prayer leading, and experiential and transformational Jewish learning. This is the setting that would plant the seeds for my future career, provide me with a flock of rabbinic and educational mentors, and bear witness to the beginning of so many of the lifelong friendships that I still cherish to this day. And yet, you heard it, I'm in a time of dread. Please come pick me up soon. I'm not kidding. It's amazing how we selectively, almost subconsciously, program our memories to sift out the bad, the painful and unendurable, and train ourselves to focus only on those moments that bring us joy and levity. It's what I imagine we mean when we reminisce about the good old days, those candy-coated, rose-tinted way things used to be. Nostalgia at its finest. Jewish prayer has an expression for this, a liturgical turn of a phrase in which we beseech God to return us to an earlier, simpler time. We chant it dramatically whenever we return to the Torah scroll to the Ark, and throughout these holy days, from Slichot all the way through Yom Kippur. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Bring us back to you, O God, and we will return. Renew in our time the days of old. So greatly do we emphasize this image of being renewed as in days of old that to a musician's ear, I'm looking at you guys, it is the dramatic climax of that melody, you know? Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu, Kekedem. But what does it mean to be renewed as in days of old? We are asking God to restore a glorious past, Kekedem, while simultaneously asking God to create a reality that is Chadash, that is new. In the words of the Canadian prophet Alanis Morissette, isn't it ironic, don't you think? I mean, how is it possible to bring back the good old days while striving for renewal, for better days ahead? Rabbi Stacy Friedman points out that the final word kekedem, referring to our past, shares the same root as the word kadima, the command to move forward, to look toward the future. The power and majesty of these ancient words, she teaches, is that they call us to both the past and the future at the very same time. These are the words that call us to the holy act of teshuvah, of returning to the best of ourselves and our lives and propelling us forward. These are the words that have called us back to hope for thousands of years, no matter what hardships and untold suffering our people have faced. This is the day that calls us to taste the sweetness of apples and honey, even as the bitterness of the past year still lingers in our mouths. And this is why we are here tonight, on the precipice of a new year, with all of its promise and possibilities. The letter I wrote to my parents all those summers ago was accompanied by a stack of report cards, certificates, birthday cards, and other nostalgic trappings. And the delight in painstakingly combing through those documents was the memories they unearthed. More powerful than what was written on each page was the portal to childhood, to growing up under my parents' roof that I was suddenly and overwhelmingly given access to. Our Jewish experience is no different. How many of us can hear the haunting melody of Kol Nidre on Yom Kippur, or taste the matzo ball soup at the Seder without longing to connect with our own past and to be transported to an earlier time in our lives? The mere fact that some of us are physically seated here in this beautiful sanctuary relocates us to a simpler time where we could embrace old friends, sit shoulder to shoulder without a worry in the world, touch the fringes of our talit to the Torah cover and bring the fabric to our lips, breathe in the soul-stirring music of Aviva and Kim and the band without questions about aerosols or plexiglass. In so many ways, we yearn for what my cousin Matthew calls BC, before COVID. But while nostalgia can be a valuable and meaningful part of our lives, there is a risk attached to it. Rabbi Uri Goldstein writes, quote, "We all have people and places to which we feel a special attachment, and formative moments which continue to influence our perspective on life. It may be the memory of childhood seders with our grandparents, or an educational institution that nurtured us intellectually and spiritually. The realization that those experiences are behind us can be deeply painful. If, however, we remain trapped in the past," he says, "if we don't grow, progress, and develop into our own people, and perhaps more importantly, if we don't expect our children and students to do the same, we will lose out on the opportunity to experience a life that is dynamic and full of the excitement of new discoveries." The essence of these holy days is that we can hold both the dream of returning to the past and a vision for the future at the same time. Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. These words affirm that no matter what, a new year is upon us, with its sweetness and its promise for renewal, and as much as we may want our old lives back, we must continue to move forward, kadima, and never succumb to despair or hopelessness. As much as we may want to return to our old lives, as much as we want to return to normal, we know the past was not perfect. Our lives, our nation, and our world were flawed before COVID-19 ever materialized. The brilliant poet and activist Sonia Renee Taylor said, quote, "We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and nature." More than a century ago, the first chief rabbi of Israel, Rav Abraham Isaac Kook, famously wrote, "The old will be made new and the new made holy. Hayashan yitchadesh v'hachadash yitkadesh." While he was engaged in the enterprise of restoring our people to its ancient homeland, Rav Kook wasn't simply looking backward to reenact the glory days of the Bible. He was also promoting a radical notion to his Orthodox followers that a new Zionism, built upon spiritual and physical connection to the land, was a sacred and ongoing task. That holiness abounds not merely in the pages of our past, but in the work that lies ahead. How might we make the old new and the new holy? How might we recapture not a nostalgia for the past, but a return to the core values that were instilled in us from a young age, the lessons and legacies of those who came before, which can then serve as a kind of a spiritual springboard to help us navigate the path forward? We might find one answer in the story of Rabbi Shmuel Shmelki Horowitz, an esteemed 18th century Hasidic master. When he was appointed as rabbi in Nikolsburg, Moravia, the southern region of what is today the Czech Republic, the community leaders informed Rabbi Shmelki that they had a special custom. Every new rabbi was expected to add a new rule or custom to the chronicles of the community. Just as an aside, can you believe it? A congregational board asking their clergy to shake things up and break from tradition? In any case, Rabbi Shmelki smiled and said nothing. As time went by and the new rabbi still had not contributed anything to the rule book, the officers of the community began to press him about this. But Rabbi Shmelki continued to make all sorts of excuses. Finally, his assistant took the initiative and placed the book in front of him, open on his desk, an inkwell and a pen neatly next to it. Reb Shmelki sat down, picked up the pen, and wrote down the 10 Commandments. "We know these words by heart," he said, "but they are always new for us." So it is with our own portal of memories, our recollections of the world how it was, and our hope for the way it should someday be. Those ancient words have never rung truer than tonight. Renew us, as in days of old, but make the old new and the new holy. You know that exercise in grade school when you write a letter to your future self, and those special teachers that go above and beyond mail it to you a year, 5, 10 years later down the road? It's like opening a time capsule to the past. And yet, this new year beckons me to write a letter to my 10-year-old self, or perhaps, in the vein of the letter I shared at the top, to write a note to my parents from camp as I would write it today. Dear Mom and Abba, my 2 weeks on faculty at camp this summer were, in a word, extraordinary. For the first time in over a year, I got to hear the sounds of children singing Hebrew songs ecstatically together, watch them dance to the latest Eurovision hits out of Israel, and just be kids again. Playing outdoors, toasting marshmallows around a campfire, swimming and skiing in the lake, and smiling unmasked whenever possible, from ear to ear, a reminder of the gift you gave to me when I was their age. And don't worry, the counselor didn't take all of Ezra's gum and fireballs, because I didn't pack him any. To be sure, there was no shortage of sugar between dessert after lunch, dessert after dinner, tuck a few times a week, and cookies before bedtime. But more than caloric intake, I was overcome by the power of this place and time. The blossoming of new friendships, the Shechianu moments that occurred when someone climbed to the top of the Alpine Tower or got up on skis for the first time. I was amazed by how many camp traditions and cheers are still the same from when you shipped me away for 8 weeks at a time. And yet I was mesmerized by the newness of it all. The extraordinary measures that camp directors and staff had to take this year to ensure the health and safety of everyone who set foot onto camp. The inclusion of a Pride Shabbat to honor and hold up the experiences of Jews in the LGBTQ community, and faculty-led conversations helping older campers and staff articulate their anger and frustration upon hearing about our country's past cruelties to indigenous peoples, while hearing those same children promise to rewrite the rule books of the future for the sake of justice and equality for all. For the record, Mom and Abba, I think I was being a little overdramatic when I last wrote to you from camp more than 30 years ago. I was not in a time of dread, but a time of discovery. Thanks for ignoring my myopic cries for help, for not picking me up early before the end of the session, even as I pleaded for you to do so. Thank you also for opening my eyes to a world that, imperfect though it may be, has the potential to reflect the values, the camaraderie, the spirituality, and profound sense of community that I first encountered at camp. They say you can't go home again, which is fine, because as long as my children, your grandchildren, are making a new home away from home for themselves, as long as we are all doing our part to bring up a generation who understand the importance of kindness and compassion, then there's no need to return to the exact way things were when I was 10. Although it would be nice to go get my gum and fireballs back. Love, Noam. P.S. I'm not kidding. The past year and a half We have each sacrificed and let go of so much. But in doing so, we have also gained new clarity about what truly matters, what is most essential in our lives: time with family and friends, our community, our health, and the well-being and dignity of others, nature, laughter, and love. This is our vision for 5782, to return to what is real and holy in our lives, and to bring the best of it forward into our future so as to build and rebuild our lives, our country, and our world. Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Renew our days and help us return to life, to health, to wholeness, and to holiness. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will.